Back in 2008, the Pentagon decided to conduct research into the mental processes of Russian President Vladimir Putin, and they came up with an interesting result. He apparently has Asperger syndrome. It feels weird to even be on the air saying that, but it apparently is the case. Back in 2008, that's the conclusion that they came to. The alleged neurological abnormalities affect all of his decisions as president. It all makes sense now.
That's because he was vaccinated.
Exactly,
Yeah,
yes.
right.
So he does not have measles.
Right.
He does, however, have Asperger's. Now, they did cite one of the scientists, Dr. Stephen Porges, an autism specialist who was cited in the report, never saw the final report, and would not embrace the Asperger's charge. Rather, he said, Putin's behavior and facial expressions reveal someone who is defensive in large social settings. And so what they're trying to do, basically, is they've looked into public statements that he's made, his habits in terms of how often he meets with foreign leaders, some of the decisions he's made, things that he's talked about his personal life, and they have tried to infer from that he, in fact, has an autism spectrum diagnosis.
Well,
I don't know exactly what to say.
Well, that's what does the state? That's
Okay,
the thing.
yeah.
What does the State Department do with that? Okay, let's say they're absolutely 100% spot on right. He's also the president of Russia, and he's going to rule the way he rules. And how you deal with him shouldn't change because he's got Asperger's. You know, if he's on the spectrum, whatever.
It might. I mean, they're constantly doing like this. One of the
I
biggest things the
understand,
CIA
but-
does is psychological evaluations
Yeah,
of foreign
all
leaders.
the time.
Yeah.
Psychological, but without diagnosis. Psychological is different than saying he's got a condition.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, and especially of this type, because this is this is different. I just don't understand how that changes how you deal with President Putin.
I mean, look, he's involved in some capacity in Ukraine right now, and we know that one of the characteristics of Asperger's is somewhat a repetitive or obsessive interest. They tend to have a very narrow focus in something in their personal life that they will know much about. So maybe if we were to drop a book about photography or about Pokemon or something, he would be gone for a month reading and figuring out everything about it.
Right.
It's probably not going to happen, but it's possible.
But
so to get the Russians out of Crimea, you think this could have something to do with Pokemon?
I think Japan should help us out. That's what I'm saying.
and if
heard
he had
this
ADD,
theory.
he'd be bombing everywhere. And that's,
Exactly. So it's probably best that this is the direction his brain has gone in. Now, however, they are not 100% sure. They would need to do a brain scan. I have tweeted Vladimir Putin. Hopefully he will submit to a voluntary brain scan.
Yeah.
But until then, we do have, I believe MSNBC was talking to a former Russian ambassador because there's going to be some pressure on them. Now that this has been revealed, Vladimir Putin seems like the sort of person that's not going to like this being out there.
Yeah.
So here is that Russian ambassador being talking about that diagnosis.
The USA Today has, through a Freedom of Information Act, gotten a hold of a Pentagon-funded study by a Pentagon think tank that suggests he could have some neurological explanation, Asperger's or some other syndrome. Have you ever seen anything like that?
Well, I don't want to talk about things I shouldn't, because I don't know what's classified and not, but I think it's obvious. Let me just state something more generally. Of course, we were deeply interested in all kinds of information about all leaders around the world, and in my portfolio, both at the White House and in Moscow, information about Mr. Putin. I can't verify or not whether that's true. I'm not an expert, but we had a deep interest in knowing as much as possible about Putin, in part because he doesn't meet with many foreign leaders. We didn't have a lot of interaction with him, so we were often guessing, and we tried to use whatever information we could obtain.
Mike McFaul, the former ambassador. I'm going to take that as a yes. Thank you very much, sir. Good to see you.
Thank you, Andrea. That's not what he said, but I'm going to take us. I would think that if you could diagnose any of these people, every leader, every prime minister and president in the entire world, that they all suffer from narcissistic personality disorder or a series of these things. And I don't even if he has sort of low-grade Asperger's or whatever, I don't even think that would really be a problem necessarily. So to your point of how would we change anything, you know what, he's doing what he wants to do. Whether he has some sort of mental condition or not, I don't know that we know how to deal with him either way.
Yeah, that's
almost
exactly.
no
We don't have a
difference.
plan to deal with him, Asperger's or not.
Yes. Nor is
Asperger's
there
or
any
not.
way to permanently deal with Asperger's. It does
By
strike
the way,
me as odd, though.
Is it I think it's Asperger's. Is it, because people say Asperger's, that's not right.
It's Asperger's.
Regionally in the U.S., the
Asperger's.
difference between B and P is wider.
Right, but a lot of people say Asperger's. Those are people just being funny?
I think they're trying to be
Those are
funny.
just the
Those
funny
people might well have Asperger's.
Okay.
Or they might be
now-
eating hamburgers.
There was some kind of...
It strikes me as odd. We've talked very often on this program, more than we should perhaps, about Keith Abloh, one of the correspondents,
God.
psychological correspondents for Fox, who will often diagnose Obama from something he's seen. I think he might be a Pentagon correspondent as well. And then finally, one thing perhaps that might come out of this is that it gets people talking about Asperger's. And look, Asperger's is one of the diagnoses on the autism spectrum. It's the one that generally leaves the most capability in terms of communication, behavioral, social skills, and things like that. And it shows that, look, he probably doesn't have Asperger's. But if he does, it shows that those with Asperger's can lead entirely normal lives, even rising to become presidents of some of the most powerful countries in the world.
Right, and invade and take over the Crimea.
Exactly. Allegedly.